The war was killing humanity. Every day brought reports of more losses. The Empire ships were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything Earth had built. In 2 years of fighting, humanity had lost half of its fleet and thousands of soldiers. The governments of Earth knew the truth that they had not told the people. They were losing. In less than a year, maybe less, they would reach Earth itself and finish what they had started. Daniel Foster sat in a dark bunker far below the surface of Earth. The walls were thick concrete and steel. No window showed the sky or the sun. Around him sat the most important leaders of human civilization. The President of Earth United, the generals of all nations, the heads of the scientific community. Every important human leader had come to this secret place to discuss one thing: how to keep their species alive. The president spoke first. His voice was tired and old. He had been in power for 8 years and the war had stolen the energy from him. He told everyone what they already knew. The military could not win. They had better weapons, faster ships, stronger shields. Earth could fight for another few months or maybe a year, but the end would always be the same: defeat. General Hayes stood up and hit the table with his fist. He was an angry man who did not like accepting failure. He said they should fight to the last human. He said surrender meant death anyway, so they should at least die as warriors. The other generals did not agree with him. They knew that his words were brave but stupid. Fighting when you could not win only meant more death, not honor. Then Doctor stood up. She was the head of the scientific council and one of the people alive. She had an idea, she said. Not a military idea, a political idea. She had been studying them for months, reading everything humanity had learned about their culture and their values. They were not like humans. They had abandoned emotion thousands of years ago. They made decisions based on logic and mathematical calculation. They valued order and tradition and honor more than anything else. They had honor codes that they followed even when it cost them. This was the key, Doctor said. This was how humans could survive. The president leaned forward. "What do you mean?" he asked. Doctor explained her plan. They had a royal family. The emperor ruled the empire, but his family held almost as much power as he did. The emperor's daughter was the only royal child. Her name was. She was 37 years old by counting, which was old for marriage in their culture. She had turned down many suitors from the greatest families in the empire. No one had been good enough for her. The plan was this: offer a marriage, a union between a human and the princess. The marriage would bind Earth and the empire together. It would create a bond so strong that the empire would not want to destroy a world that was now connected to their royal family. The honor codes that they valued so much would force them to protect the world of their princess's husband. The generals and leaders looked at this idea like it was crazy. One asked if Doctor had lost her mind. Marriage to stop a war. That was something from old stories, not real strategy. But the president told everyone to listen. He asked what they had to lose. They were already losing the war. A crazy plan was better than no plan at all. General Hayes asked a hard question. Who would marry the alien? What human would agree to marry a creature from another world? What man would want to go to an alien planet and marry a woman he had never met? Doctor had already thought about this. She had a name, Captain Daniel Foster. He was 34 years old, one of the best commanders in the entire human fleet. He had won battles against them. He was brave and smart and could stay calm when everything around him was burning. He was exactly the kind of man who could survive a marriage with an alien princess. He was exactly the kind of man who could survive on the and not lose his mind. The president made the decision. They would try it. They would contact the through a secure line and propose the marriage. If the emperor refused, nothing was lost. But if he agreed, humanity might live. They might have a future. 3 days later, Daniel Foster was brought to the bunker. He was told the plan without any time to prepare. He was told that he would marry a princess who he had never met. He was told that his life would change forever, that he would have to live on an alien world, that he would have to understand an alien culture, that he would have to become something more than human if he wanted to survive. Daniel did not refuse. He asked what would happen to his family if he agreed. The president told him that his family would be protected. They would have everything they needed. They would be famous. Their son would be remembered in history as the family of the man who saved humanity. Daniel took 3 days to say goodbye to everyone he loved. He spent time with his mother and his sister. He wrote letters that he did not know if they would ever read. Then he went back to the bunker and told the president yes. He would marry the princess. He would do it to save his people. The emperor surprised everyone by accepting the proposal. Through diplomatic channels, he said that his daughter would meet with the human captain. He said that a union between humans and could bring honor to the empire. He said that his daughter had always wanted to know more about other species. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe this was what the universe wanted. Daniel was given 3 weeks to learn about culture and language. Experts taught him their customs. They told him how to show respect. They taught him that did not use emotion. They made decisions based on pure logic. They did not understand love the way humans did. They did not understand art or music or the desire to create beauty for no reason. They just understood order and mathematics and the way the universe worked according to the laws of physics and logic. Then Daniel was taken to a ship and carried up into space. He traveled to a station that sat between Earth and the station was neutral ground. It belonged to neither species. Here, the wedding ceremony would happen. Here, Daniel Foster would marry a woman he had never met. Here, 2 species would come together in hope that love or duty or honor could stop a war. When Daniel first saw walking into the chamber where the ceremony would happen, he did not know what to think. She was tall and thin with skin that shone like polished metal. Her eyes glowed with a soft violet light. She was beautiful in a way that was completely alien. She was not human. She would never be human. But when she looked at him and tilted her head in a way that showed curiosity, Daniel realized that she was also a person. She was also afraid. She was also brave enough to do something that made no sense. The ceremony was short and cold. There was no joy in it. There was only duty and honor and the weight of 2 civilizations hoping that one strange marriage could end a terrible war. But as placed her hand over Daniel's heart, he felt something unexpected. He felt the warmth of her skin. He felt the beating of her heart. He felt that she was alive and real, and that this moment meant something, even if it was also crazy. The station where Daniel and lived was built for both species. Half the rooms had Earth atmosphere and Earth temperature. The other half had atmosphere, which was colder and had different gases that would kill a human if he breathed it without protection. Their private chambers were in the middle, adjusted to a temperature and air mixture that both of them could breathe. It was not perfect for either species, but it was something they could both survive. For the first 2 weeks they barely spoke. Daniel ate his meals, ate her meals. They slept in the same bed because that was what married couples did, but neither of them touched the other. It was strange and awkward and lonely. Daniel had expected it to be difficult, but he had not expected it to feel this empty. Then one day asked him a question. She asked why humans cried. She had read about it in the reports that the scientists had gathered about human biology. They understood that water came out of the eyes when humans felt strong emotion. But she did not understand why. What purpose did it serve? How did it help? She asked this like she genuinely wanted to know, not like she was making fun of him. Daniel tried to explain. He said that crying was not something that served a purpose. It was just something that happened to humans. When they felt sad or angry or overwhelmed, their bodies cried. It did not fix anything. It did not solve problems. It just happened. Was confused by this answer. She said that everything should serve a purpose. If tears did not fix problems, then they were not useful. They were not logical. Daniel said that humans were not always logical, said that sounded exhausting. But she kept asking questions. She asked why humans created art when it had no practical use. Daniel took her to the observation deck and showed her a human painting that had been brought on the station. It showed a sunset on Earth, the sky filled with orange and red and pink colors. It was beautiful. It made no sense. It served no purpose, but humans loved it. Studied the painting for a long time. She asked if all human art was about looking at things. Daniel said no, some art was about music. He played some earth music for her. It was a simple song, not complicated, but it was beautiful. Listened to the entire song without moving. When it finished, she said that it was strange. The different sounds did not create any kind of logical pattern. They did not teach anything or provide information, but they did create a feeling. She asked what feeling. Daniel said it depended on the person. For some, it was sadness. For others, it was joy. For him, it was something in between. Over the next months, became obsessed with understanding human emotion. She asked Daniel to explain everything. Why did humans want to have families? Why did they care about other humans who were not related to them? Why did they value something called loyalty? Why would a human die to protect another human they had just met? Daniel found himself explaining human nature in ways he had never had to before. He realized that he did not really understand it himself. He just felt it. He had spent his whole life being human without ever thinking about why humans were the way they were. Taught him about her people in return. She explained that culture was based on perfect logic and mathematics. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. Every decision was made by calculating all possible outcomes and choosing the one that was most efficient. Did not have wars because wars were inefficient. They had not had violence in thousands of years because violence was not logical. But then told him something that surprised him. She said that her people had not always been this way. Thousands of years ago, they had been like humans. They had felt emotion. They had made decisions based on feelings. They had created art and music. They had fought each other constantly. Then a great scientist named or had created a technology that allowed to suppress their emotions. He had taught them that emotion was the source of all their problems. Without emotion, he said, they could be perfect. They could create a perfect society based on pure logic. At first, it worked. They became peaceful and efficient. But over thousands of years, something happened. They became hollow. They went through life making perfect decisions that meant nothing. They existed without meaning. Some wanted to feel again, but they were ashamed to admit it. Feeling was considered a weakness. Told Daniel that she was different. She had always wanted to feel things. She had always wanted to understand why her people had given up something so important. She told him that reading about humans had given her hope. Maybe humans had figured out how to live with emotion in a way that was good. Maybe she could learn from them. Daniel and started eating meals together on purpose, not just because they were married. They talked for hours, asked him to teach her about human music. Daniel played her songs from Earth. They were old songs and new songs. Some were sad, some were happy, some were angry. Listened to each one and tried to feel what Daniel felt. One night, Daniel played a song for her about love. It was a simple song, just a man singing about how much he loved someone. Listened to the whole thing. When it finished, she asked Daniel why the man was so concerned with one other person. From a logical standpoint, it made no sense to focus all of your energy on making one other person happy. Daniel said that was the whole point. Love did not make logical sense. It made emotional sense. When you loved someone, their happiness became more important to you than your own. You would do anything for them. You would die for them. You would break all the rules for them. Was quiet for a long time. Then she asked if Daniel had ever felt that way about someone. Daniel realized that he was starting to feel that way about her. It scared him. This was supposed to be a fake marriage. It was supposed to end after 1 year. He was supposed to go back to Earth and was supposed to find a real husband. But something had changed. He told that he was starting to care about her in a way he had not expected. Did not respond with logic. She did something that violated everything her people had taught her. She reached out and took his hand. She said that she was feeling something too, something that her people would call illogical and wasteful, but it was real. She could not deny it anymore. They did not kiss, But they held hands and sat together in the dark, two creatures from different worlds learning that connection could happen even between species that seemed like they had nothing in common. The war between Earth and the Empire had not ended yet, but in that moment for Daniel and the fighting stopped. Something new was beginning, something that neither of them understood or could explain, but something real. The war ended exactly as the leaders of Earth had planned. The Empire agreed to stop fighting. Trade began between the two species. Scientists from both worlds started working together. It was a victory for humanity, one not through weapons but through a marriage contract. The newspapers on Earth called it a miracle. They called Daniel Foster a hero. Statues were built in his honor. Schools were named after him. But Daniel felt none of the joy that Earth was celebrating. He knew why. The peace treaty came with an expiration date for his marriage. The contract was for 1 year. After 12 months, the political alliance would be considered complete and the marriage could be dissolved. Annulment papers were already being prepared by lawyers on both worlds. In 9 months, Daniel would be free to go home. In 9 months, he would lose. Knew this too. Neither of them talked about it. They lived day by day, enjoying what they had while they still had it. They spent every possible moment together. They made plans that they both knew they might never use, told Daniel about places on her that she wanted to show him. Daniel talked about his family on Earth and how he wanted to meet them someday. But underneath every conversation was the knowledge that someday was running out. 3 months before the annulment date, Daniel received a message from Earth. The governments of both planets had decided to hold a grand celebration. It would take place on Prime, both humans, and would gather to celebrate the successful marriage alliance and the new peace. Daniel and would be the guests of honor. They would be celebrated as the two who had saved their civilizations. Did not want to go home. She told Daniel this very directly. On the station, she was separate from her people. She could be herself. She could feel things without having to explain them. But on Prime, she would have to face her family. She would have to face the traditionalists who had always opposed her independence. She would have to watch her people's reaction to her human husband. But they both knew that they had to go. It was not a choice. It was duty. It was obligation. The same things that had brought them together would now force them to face what came next. The city on Prime was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It was built from a crystal material that reflected light in 1,000 different directions. The buildings were tall and perfect, arranged in exact geometric patterns. There was no disorder, no messiness, no character. Everything was precisely calculated and perfectly placed. To Daniel, it was beautiful but also terrifying. This was world. This order was what her people valued above all else. His family was waiting for them at the landing platform. Her father was the emperor, a tall with intelligent eyes that seemed to calculate everything they looked at. Her mother was the imperial consort, elegant and controlled. His brother was a military commander. None of them showed much emotion, but Daniel could feel the weight of their judgment. The emperor spoke first. He welcomed Daniel He said that the marriage alliance had been a success. The war had ended. Peace had been achieved. The emperor seemed satisfied, like a problem had been solved. He did not seem to understand that Daniel had become something more than political tools. Then the emperor said something that made Daniel's heart stop. He told that soon she would be free. The contract would be dissolved and she could marry someone more appropriate, someone of her own species, someone from one of the great families. The emperor had already been contacted by interested suitors. The most promising was a general named. He was brilliant, powerful, and genetically superior in every way that mattered to calculation. Did not respond to her father, but Daniel could see that she was shaking. He could see that the words had hurt her. That night they were alone in the private chamber that had been prepared for them in the imperial palace. Came to Daniel, and she did something he had never seen her do before. She cried. Real tears ran down her face, something that it was trained from childhood never to do. She told Daniel what her family was saying. The traditionalists had been angry about her marriage. They saw it as a betrayal of values. but they had accepted it because they thought it was temporary. They thought the contract would end and would accept her duty to her people. Now they were pushing her father to find her a new husband immediately. The general was waiting. He was everything a princess should want. He was everything Daniel was not. He was the logical choice. He was the choice that made sense. Asked Daniel a question that cut through all the fear and politics. She asked him if he wanted to stay with her or if he wanted to go back to Earth. She asked him if what had happened between them was real or if it was just something that happened because they were stuck together with no other choice. Daniel realized in that moment that he had been a coward. He had been waiting for someone else to make a decision for him. He had been treating their marriage like it was something temporary, something that would end and be forgotten. He had not fought for it. He had just let it happen, like a leaf floating down a river with no control over where the current took him. He told the truth. He did not want to go back to Earth. He did not want to return to his old life. He wanted to stay with her. He wanted a real marriage, not a contract. He wanted to build a life with her on Prime or Earth or anywhere else as long as they were together. Told him what she wanted to do. She said that she was going to refuse the annulment. She was going to tell her father that she chose Daniel Foster. She chose a human instead of a. She chose emotion over logic. She chose love over duty. She knew that her people would not understand. She knew that she was breaking thousands of years of tradition. But she could not go back to being the one who was willing to accept whatever choice her family made for her. The next day, went to her father and told him that she was refusing the annulment. The emperor was shocked. A princess did not refuse duty. The emperor said that she was confused, that she was experiencing something that humans called infatuation, but that it would pass. Told her father that she understood her duty. But her duty was also to be true to herself. She had changed. Knowing Daniel had changed her. Love was real whether her people understood it or not. She would not marry, she would not dissolve her marriage. She would stay with Daniel, and if the empire could not accept that, then she would leave. The threat of losing his daughter stopped the emperor's argument. He realized that his daughter was serious. She would actually leave her world for her human husband. After 3 days of tense discussions, the emperor made his decision. He would allow the marriage to continue. It was not what tradition demanded. It was not logical. But it was what his daughter wanted, and he realized that emotion might not be as illogical as his people had always believed. The decision to keep the marriage caused chaos on both worlds. Earth government officials argued about what this meant for their future. If Daniel was staying on Prime permanently, did that mean Earth had lost him? The politicians wanted to use him for more negotiations, more diplomatic visits, more celebrations. But Daniel refused. He was done being a tool for governments and politicians. He was done with duty. He wanted to be a husband. On Prime, the traditionalists were openly angry. General made his displeasure known through political channels. He said that the empire was making a mistake by accepting a human into the royal family. He said that it would lead to the corruption of bloodlines. He said that emotion was a disease, and Daniel was spreading it like a virus through the most important family in the empire. Daniel had to adjust to a life that was completely foreign to him. Society was organized in ways that made no sense to human thinking. Everything was decided by committee and calculation. Nothing was spontaneous. Nothing was wasteful. Food was perfect but tasted like nothing. Entertainment was educational. Even play had a purpose. But Daniel was determined to make it work. He started learning the language more seriously. He studied their history and philosophy. He tried to understand the way his wife's people thought. It was like learning to see the world through completely different eyes. For her part, became more interested in human culture than ever before. She wanted Daniel to teach her everything about being human. She wanted to understand music completely. So Daniel found a musician on Prime, who had always been interested in the forbidden art of Earth music. Together, they started teaching about melody and harmony and rhythm. The princess started creating her own music. It was strange at first. mixing mathematics with human emotion. But slowly, something beautiful began to emerge. She created compositions that made sense to minds but also made hearts feel something. It was revolutionary. Older listened to her music and felt things they had been suppressing for generations. Daniel and decided to build a home that was not like any other home on Prime. It had human elements and elements, but it was something completely new. The walls had human paintings alongside mathematical art. The library had books from both species. The common areas were designed so that both humans and could be comfortable there. The couple also started planning a future that was not planned by anyone else, wanted a child. On Prime, having children was a calculated decision. You had to submit genetic information. Computers would determine if your genetics were compatible enough to produce healthy offspring. The process took months of evaluation. Daniel told that on Earth, people just had children because they wanted to. They did not wait for computers to tell them it was acceptable. They did not calculate every possible problem. They just loved each other and made a choice. Found this idea beautiful and terrifying at the same time, but she wanted to try the human way. She wanted to make a choice based on emotion instead of logic. The medical community protested. They said the risk was too great. A human and a might not be able to create healthy offspring together. The experiments could fail. The results could be unpredictable. Daniel started working with scientists to prove them wrong. He and they designed careful studies. They looked at the genetics of both species. They found that while humans and were very different, they were not so different that reproduction was impossible. It would just require care and monitoring. After a year of preparation and study became pregnant. The news shocked the entire empire. It was the first time a human and a would have a child together. No one knew what the baby would be like. The traditionalists said it was an abomination. Progressive were excited. Earth celebrated wildly. Daniel also took on new responsibilities. He could not just be the princess's human husband. He had to contribute to society in meaningful ways. He started by working with the Emperor's Council on cultural exchange programs. He brought human scientists and artists to Prime. He helped establish a university program where humans and could study together. It was difficult work. Many resented his presence. They saw him as an outsider, a human who did not belong in their society. Some families refused to let their children study in programs that he helped create. Some senators in the imperial parliament voted against every proposal he made. But there was also resistance from Earth. Some humans were angry that Daniel had chosen to stay on an alien world. Some said he had betrayed humanity by marrying an alien and having an alien baby. Some said he should come home and leave Prime behind. Daniel did not listen to any of the criticism. He was building something new, something that had never existed before. He was building a bridge between two species. It would take time. It would not be easy, but it was worth doing. Was also changing her world from within. She started the Institute for Emotional Understanding on Prime. It was the first official organization dedicated to helping people understand and accept emotion as part of being alive, not something to be ashamed of or suppressed. She brought in human psychologists and artists. She showed Young that emotion was not weakness. She argued in the imperial parliament that her people had made a terrible mistake thousands of years ago when they had suppressed their emotions. She said that a civilization without emotion was not perfect. It was incomplete. The traditionalists fought her every step of the way, but Young were listening. They saw that was different from other members of the royal family. She was more alive. She felt things deeply, and instead of being weak, she was strong. She was strong enough to change her world. Daniel and his relationship also grew stronger during this time. They learned to work together as partners. When one of them wanted to give up, the other pushed them forward. They argued sometimes about cultural differences and about how to raise their children and about what kind of future they wanted. But the arguments always ended the same way. with them choosing each other again. By the time their daughter was born, Daniel had become someone new. He was not fully, but he was not just human anymore either. He was something in between, something new, and was also changing. She was becoming someone who combined the best of both species, the logic and order of them with the emotion and creativity of humans. Together, they were creating a new kind of civilization, one that had never existed before, was born during a storm on Prime. The sky was dark with purple clouds, and rain fell in patterns that somehow made sense to scientists but looked random to human eyes. She came into the world screaming, a fully human sound that shocked the medical staff. Most Bobbies were quiet and calm from birth. They did not waste energy on noise that had no purpose. When Daniel first saw his daughter, he wept. The doctors in the room did not know what to do with his tears. Understood. She reached out and touched his face with her hand, trying to understand the liquid that was streaming from his eyes. Daniel told her that he was happy. He was so happy that his body could not contain it. Tears came out instead. Looked like neither parent and like both at the same time. She had luminescent violet eyes, but her skin was darker, more human. Her features were a mix of both species. The first human hybrid was real. She existed, and she was perfect. The birth of changed everything on Prime. Scientists wanted to study her to understand her biology and her capabilities. The traditionalists said she was a mistake, proof that the mixing of species was wrong. But progressives saw her as a symbol of the future. She was what came next. She was evolution itself. As grew, she developed abilities that neither parent possessed alone. She could think with perfect logic and mathematical precision. But she could also feel like a human, with emotion and intuition. She seemed to understand both species in ways that made communication easier for everyone around her. By the time was 5 years old, she was already remarkable. She would sit in meetings between human and diplomats and translate not just language but meaning. She would explain to why humans acted on emotion, and she would explain to humans why needed logic. She was a bridge, just like her parents had been a bridge. The traditionalist faction that had once opposed Daniel's marriage became increasingly weak and irrelevant. Their argument was that mixing species was wrong and would lead to the destruction of culture, but was proof that they were wrong. The young people of Prime looked at her and did not see an abomination. They saw the future. Young began questioning the rigid separation of emotion from their lives. If the princess could feel and still be strong, then maybe emotion was not weakness. If a human could live on Prime and contribute to their society, then maybe other species were not inferior. If a human baby could be born and grow up healthy and smart, then maybe the old rules were just habits, not truth. Intermarriage between humans became more common. Trade increased exponentially. Scientific collaboration became the most important thing happening in either civilization. Books were written about Daniel and universities studied the history of their relationship. Their love story became the foundation of a new era of peace and cooperation between two species. Daniel eventually stepped back from formal political roles. He had changed society as much as one human could. Now it was time to let the new generation lead. He turned his attention to education. He created schools where young humans and young learned together from childhood. He believed that if the next generation grew up together, they would not see each other as alien. They would see each other as friends and equals. Became the voice of reform on Prime. She was appointed to head a new department of the imperial government dedicated to cultural evolution and understanding. She brought in artists and philosophers from Earth. She showed her people that human concepts like beauty and love and meaning were not inferior to concepts like order and efficiency. They were just different ways of being alive. The emperor watched his daughter transform her world and was proud. He realized that his decision to accept her marriage had been the best choice he ever made, not because it was logical, but because it was right. He told Daniel this one day while they were walking in the palace gardens. The emperor said that he had spent his whole life believing that emotion was weakness. He had been wrong. Seeing his daughter happy, seeing her create music and art and meaning from her life, he finally understood what humans had always known. Feeling things deeply was not weakness. It was what made life worth living. Daniel told the emperor that on Earth there was a saying, "You cannot choose your family, but you can choose your family." By marrying and staying on Prime, Daniel had chosen his family. He had chosen the people, even though they had been his enemies. That choice had changed everything. 15 years after Daniel had first agreed to the desperate plan in the underground bunker on Earth, he stood in the great amphitheater of Prime, was performing there, a concert of her own creation. She was 20 years old now, a woman who could speak 3 languages fluently and could navigate the politics of both civilizations with ease. The music had created was something entirely new. It had the structure and mathematical beauty of composition, but it had the emotion and meaning of human music. When you listened to it, you felt something. You understood something about existence that you had not understood before. It was perfect because it was imperfect. It was useful because it served no purpose except to make people feel alive. The amphitheater was filled with humans and sitting together, watching a young woman who was the future of both their civilizations. When the concert ended, the audience erupted in applause. Both species showed their appreciation in their own ways. Humans cheered, made a sound that was their version of approval, a harmonic humming that filled the air. Stood beside Daniel as they watched their daughter take her bow. She reached down and took his hand. After 15 years of marriage, she still did this. She had learned that humans needed to hold hands. It made them feel connected. It made them feel less alone. Told Daniel something that her people would have said was illogical. She said that if she had to choose between being happy and being logical, she would choose happy every single time. She said that her people had spent thousands of years trying to be perfect, but they had forgotten that being alive was more important than being perfect. Daniel squeezed her hand and told her that she was the most human alien he had ever met, smiled. In her early years, she would not have understood what smiling meant. Now, she smiled all the time. She had learned that humans were right. Some things were more important than logic. As they watched bow again, Daniel realized that the marriage that was supposed to end after 1 year had changed everything. It had not just ended a war. It had created something new. It had shown 2 species that they could be stronger together than apart. It had created a future that had never existed before. The fake marriage had become the most real thing in the universe.